Hello everybody, welcome to A British Audiophile. If you're new to this channel, my name is Taryn. I just want to start by saying a massive thank you to all of you last week who watched my review of the Wilsington R8 with the upgraded tubes and left a comment wishing myself and my family well. We all caught COVID over Christmas. Thankfully nobody got seriously ill. Can't say that I fancy doing any cartwheels anytime soon. I've got a bit of a lingering cough and I get tired quite quick, but we're all doing really well. It was just really heartwarming to get all those messages, so a massive thank you to all of you. So what am I looking at this week? To commemorate Triangle's 40th anniversary, which wasn't that long ago, they launched two heavily revised models of their long-standing Esprit range, the Antel floor stander and the Comete stand mount. It's the Comete stand mounts that you can see behind me here today. I'll get into what's different about the 40th anniversary model compared to the standard version in a bit, but I just want to let you into a little bit of a secret. I have a soft spot for Triangle speakers. Sorry about that, probably just comes across as creepy. First of all, it's the way that they look. There's that French flair to the industrial design, especially as you spend a little bit more money on the more exotic models. Some of them just look sensational. Okay, so they're not the last word in technical performance. I'm sure if for some bizarre reason they found their way into the hands of some hardened objectivist, he or she would have many a sleepless night agonizing over the measured performance. It's the way in which Triangle speakers sound why I think they have such a hardened following with some audiophiles. They're warm and rich sounding whilst remaining engaging at the same time. They're refined and never harsh and bright. So when I found out that the 40th anniversary models had trickled down technologies from some of the higher ranges, I had to check out what that was about. Let's see how I got on. The Triangle 40th anniversary Comete retails for £1,499 in the UK. It's a two-way stand mount speaker available in a stunning gloss Santos rosewood finish, or if you prefer a little less bling and something a little bit more understated, a blonde sycamore. Both real wood finishes feel premium compared to many standard wood veneer offerings. It measures 324 by 200 by 400 millimeters or 12.75 by 7.9 by 15.75 inches, with each speaker weighing in at 8.8 kilograms, 19.4 pounds. The gold anodized magnesium dome horn-loaded tweeter is perhaps the most visually striking feature. There's a 165mm 6.5-inch cellulose paper mid-woofer. Both drivers are new from the standard Comete model. More on that coming up. The twin ports are also mounted to the front baffle. To the rear you'll find a rose gold anodized aluminium plaque and one pair of decent quality 5-way binding posts that are a nice departure from cheap plastic. The 40th anniversary Comete model is £500 more expensive than the standard model. So what do you get for your extra 500 quid? Well, for starters, it's built in France as far as I'm aware. The standard model is still built in China. And each model is tested in Triangle's own anechoic chamber. It's also listened to in their auditorium. And because of that, the quality control can be much higher than would ordinarily be the case. There's the all-new horn-loaded TZ2520MG tweeter with a composite dome constructed from rose gold anodized magnesium. It's supposed to offer higher efficiency, lower distortion, and better directivity than the standard titanium version. There's a new mid-woofer as well. It may still be a paper cone, but with a different composition. Now with 100% cellulose paper and without any surface treatment in the pursuit of a more natural sound and less coloration. The cone has a new profile that's supposed to improve frequency response and linearity, which basically means it digs down further into the low frequencies and requires less filtration through the crossover. The crossover has been reworked and improved with reliance on better quality parts such as air core inductors, MET capacitors and ceramic resistors. There's a second order filter on the mid-woofer and a fourth order filter on the tweeter crossing over at 4 kHz. And then there's those new real wood finishes themselves, whether it's the rosewood Santos or the blonde sycamore. The pictures really don't do them justice. They're very nice looking speakers. So how does the 40th Anniversary Comete sound? Does it have the characteristics of the best sounding triangle speakers that I was describing earlier? A warm, lush presentation with a little bit of life and engagement in the mid-range, but not bright, remaining refined at the same time? The answer is yeah, hell yeah. Where do I start? So I may as well start with the bass. It's nicely judged for a stand mount speaker around this price. There's a real solid mid-bass punch that will get your legs moving, but they haven't overcooked it. So when things do get a little bit busy, there's enough bass definition there to hold your interest. It's a mid-sized stand mount speaker with fairly decent sensitivity. It's officially rated at 90 dB. There's a trade-off between sensitivity and bass extension, but given its sensitivity, it's got a reasonable amount of bass extension as well. Officially, it starts rolling off at around 47 Hz. That's where its -3 dB point is. And I think Triangle have been pretty honest here. I haven't measured it to confirm it, but certainly with my test material, it seemed to dig down that far, if not a little bit further, with room gain. Real bass heads out there, I'm sure people who listen to electronica or pipe organs or people who have home cinemas will want to add subwoofers, and there's a lot of benefits to adding subwoofers anyway in your system that I've spoken about before. But I think the vast majority of people who don't fall into that category will find nothing to criticise in the bass performance. The mid-range is where most people are going to decide whether this is a speaker for them or not. If you like a tell it like it is kind of presentation, well, this isn't the speaker for you. But if you like things a little bit romanticised without sounding boring, then you might want to pay a little bit closer attention to what I'm about to say. By virtue of its lower mid-range, it's a warm and full-bodied sounding speaker, but without sounding thick. It's open in the mid-range. You can clearly make out the distinction between one instrument and another. Nothing sounds compressed. But this isn't the most revealing speaker I've heard around this price. The leading edges of notes, the micro details and the decays are softened and obscured enough to give it a fluid kind of presentation. There's a bit of prominence in the upper mid-range, which gives vocals and lead instruments a sense of vitality and a greater sense of intimacy. This is something that people would look for in a good horn-loaded design. Well, many people will look for in any case. And I have to say, out of all the horn-loaded speakers I've reviewed thus far, this is the most refined. I suspect it's down to the expressiveness of the tweeter why the 40th anniversary isn't the last word in clarity and airiness on top. But please don't misunderstand, it's not poor in this regard, just not class leading. In pretty much every other regard I'd consider it job done, apart from one. It has a decent wide soundstage and there's even a little bit of layering front to back. Not a huge amount of soundstage depth. As I mentioned, the mid-range prominence pushes vocals and lead instruments forward a touch. But the imaging is a little bit vague, especially around the center. You can make out the location of instruments, but they're not locked down. There's a little bit of vagary about it. So let's talk about some comparisons. I'm sure I'll get asked about the Triangle Genèse trios that are a similar price. The 40th Anniversary Comete doesn't have the fancy curved cabinetry and the semi-debaffled tweeter assembly of the trio, but it does have more modern drivers and superior parts in the crossover assembly. What you have to bear in mind is that it's been over a year since I reviewed the Triangle Genèse trio, so I can only give you an impression of that speaker in relation to this. My feeling is that the trio is a little bit more heavy-handed and coloured in its sonic presentation. The bass is more boosted and that horn coloration in the mid-range is more prominent. In relation, the 40th Anniversary Comete is more refined and more balanced in its overall sonic signature. But like I said, I wouldn't be betting the house on it. The Amphion Argon 1 makes for a very interesting comparison. It's a very different sounding speaker, which happened to be my speaker of the year in 2021, offered at a similar price. The Argon 1 is the more revealing speaker, allowing you to hear more details and delve deeper into recording, but it doesn't have everything its own way. When it comes to the mid-range performance, the 40th Anniversary is a little bit more open sounding and less compressed. It's not entirely surprising. The Argon 1 is the smaller speaker, and when it comes down to the mid-range, it sounds smaller. You get what you pay for more often than you realise when it comes to hi-fi, and my Product Response 1 SCs illustrated that fact, operating clearly at a higher level than both of these two very good modern speakers. And for a change, you don't just have to take my word for it. Rob Hunt was here. He's the UK sales director for REL. He was here to deliver and help set up the REL 7 TX subwoofer. Hopefully you can see in that corner. During our listening sessions, we switched out the triangle for my Proax. It took him about 5 seconds to realize how much cleaner, more open and natural sounding they were. I'm only telling you this as a way of context and for some credibility. At the end of the day, my Proax are 23 years old. There aren't many people who are going to get the opportunity to listen to them, but I do still use them as a reference in many of my speaker reviews. So I just wanted to give you an idea of how good they are. It's not a fair price appropriate comparison. The Triangle 40th Anniversary Comete is a very fine sounding speaker for the money. Apologies for the constantly changing light conditions. It's just one of those days when it comes to the British weather. What can you do? This section is going to be pretty straightforward because the Triangle 40th Anniversary Comete is a fairly easy speaker to set up and to live with. It's not particularly fussy when it comes to speaker positioning. That tends to be the case with narrow dispersion speakers if they're done right, and that's what you have here by virtue of that horn-loaded tweeter. I think it's going to be pretty forgiving when it comes to the acoustic setting, including minimalist spaces which are a bit acoustically lively. That's because it isn't hot on top, and it plays well at low listening levels. So if those of you who like your late night listening sessions, you're going to be pretty pleased as well. There are a few setup tips that I'd like to share with you though. It's got a good amount of mid-bass punch, so if you want to retain a little bit of definition, pull it away from the walls. I wound up with it about a metre away from the wall behind it. That's measuring from the front of the speaker, which is what I always do, because that's where the drivers are located. Stereo imaging isn't the strongest suit of this speaker, and a lot of you are going to want to maximise the amount of information that you're getting from it on top. If that's the case, you're going to wind up with a very similar position to what I have. That's with the speakers slightly wider apart and with a large amount of toe in. It's not directly pointing at my ears, just passing by left and right. That improves focus, and because you're listening pretty much on axes, you're getting maximum amount of information from that tweeter. It's a fairly easy speaker to drive with a minimum impedance of 4.2 ohms, so even something like the IOTA VXSA3 makes a fairly good fist of things, although it doesn't have the refinement and mid-range body to do it justice. Switch to something like the Exposure 2510 and you're really talking. That was my amplifier of the year in 2021. Neutral, natural, detailed, with a touch of romanticism. Makes a great combination with the 40th anniversary. The Hagel H190, at double the price of the Exposure and these speakers for that matter, is a little bit of overkill. It does an excellent job of getting out of the way and allowing the character of the speakers to come through. The extra scale, dynamics, grip and control over the Exposure didn't go unappreciated though. You give up some of that grip and control, but not the scale and dynamics when you switch to the Wilsington R8 with uprated PS Vane tubes that I only just finished reviewing. Out of all the amplifiers here, the uprated Wilsington has the fullest, richest sound. You might think too much of a good thing. Not at all. It was my favourite combination with the 40th anniversaries. The Triangle 40th Anniversary Comete is a beautifully finished speaker that will win over many fans with its warm and engaging personality. It not only lives up to its marketing claim that it's designed to foster emotion, it's worthy to continue the legacy of some fine Triangle speakers of the past. It isn't for everybody. What speaker is for everybody? If you want to tell it like it is, tell me everything kind of presentation, you're better off with something like the Amphion Argon 1. But if you're prepared to trade some of that for a bit of romanticism and a bit more engagement, I'm trying not to use the word lively because people associate that with bright, and this isn't a bright speaker. Well, if you like that kind of presentation, this may well be the speaker for you. There's no doubt in my mind it's a very good speaker, and it comes highly recommended. My question for today is, what kind of tonality do you look for from your speakers? Do you want something that's neutral, as close to ruler flat as you can get? Or do you consider that to be boring? Perhaps you prefer something warm and romantic sounding, like a Harbath or a BBC LS35A. Or do you prefer something lively and energetic, like a B&W or a Klipsch, for instance? Please let me know in the comment section. I'd love to find out. All that remains for me to say is, if you like this video, please hit that like button, please share it. If you like what I'm doing with this channel and you haven't subscribed already, do consider subscribing. does help this channel to grow, and hit that bell notification so you know when new videos arrive. Check me out on Patreon for consultancy services and the ABA Club. We've got bonus content, and through video calls we get to chat face to face sometimes. But for today, for now, the British Audiophile signing off.